All right. Thanks again. And thanks for coming back to our second episode. We are going to be talking about team dynamics within leadership and maybe some of those challenges that we're seeing on a regular basis. So, kind of to give you a bit of a background, Heather and I were chatting, even experienced a bit of this ourselves in the discussion of what we want to talk about today. But so much of what we face every day seems to be a struggle um, of leaders trying to be part of a team, right? You get kind of the same thing, Heather?
Exactly. Like on your team, you want driven, successful people. But with that drive and that success energy, you tend to get some negative effects.
I think negative is a very kind way of putting it. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we see it in even our classes, at school.
Mhm.
You get a bunch of people who are driven, um, really want to do well and excel and show how much they know about a certain topic, and they take over the class
Yes.
session, and then it becomes more of a who's so and so, and it actually kills the the team of the class. Like if you would
Mhm.
consider the classroom an example of a team, it now all of a sudden that one person who on day one just wasn't ever letting anybody else shine, I'll say,
Yes.
they take control of the classroom from there on out. And it's a you learn less, I think.
I think we definitely put up blocks and walls when we have that, and especially like if we go into the workplace, that happens all of the time. We have leaders that are so used to being followed that they don't want to be part of a team, right? That's not what they're used to. It's just typically like when I was in the military, you do what you're told. And I'm the leaders at the top. I mean, it's a succession for sure, but oftentimes we find C suites, top level leadership really struggling with being a part of a team in general. And sometimes to lead best, you have to be part of that team, right?
Exactly. And you do see that, especially like in companies where they go from startup to
Yeah.
mid-range to huge corporations. You see that dynamics of leadership, it has to adjust, and it's
Mhm.
really hard to adjust. Do you ever find it hard to adjust as a leader yourself?
I think being flexible is the hardest thing as a leader to do. I One of my favorite books actually was by Adam Grant, and it's called Think Again. And honestly, as just a human, it helped me so much because it really helped. Well, his audiobook is great. He reads it himself, and when I'm in the car, it was very helpful. But it just reminds you that just because you felt one way and this was the right, quote unquote right way of doing something, did not mean that it was correct in future time, in 5 minutes from now, 5 days, 5 years, 50 years, right? So always be flexible enough emotionally, mentally, and obviously physically to keep up your health, but to be able to change your mind, to be able to find new ways of approaching a situation. And I think in business, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, if you're constantly improving and never being stagnant, I mean, look at all these stories of being stagnant or thinking you're good enough. Like, look at Blockbuster. How good enough are they now? They've got one store in Oregon, I think it is. I don't know anybody that uses BlackBerry anymore, right? They thought they were just good enough. So,
Yeah, I think that I'm curious about that book, Think Again, because I do think it's hard because there has to be, it's a fine line because you can't
true.
go into a meeting and not have an outline and a plan. It
Hmm.
all of a sudden then the meeting becomes less effective or too long, or there's not really a focused energy on what you're doing. But I have seen when I've been a leader and although I have an outline and I have a goal at the end, that I'm not too rigid within that outline. So I'm allowing other people to have different ideas and kind of let the conversation or the direction go with what's needed. And I think I found it very difficult because I have an agenda. In a lot of ways, I'm a type A personality where I'm like, this is what we need to do. This is the next step. That's it, and I already have it all planned out. I just want buy-in, right?
Right. And I'm your arch
I,
nemesis because I don't do like not to say I don't do agendas, but I love that people like you do because whew, man, no.
right. Maybe that's why this podcast is going to work out well for both of us.
It's true. Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting because then it becomes like a power struggle of the leader wanting to be seen as the leader, but
Hmm.
then also the team people that are also leaders, them wanting to shine. Like
Hmm.
it's a great problem to have, I would say. Like that's a problem you kind of want where there's a lot of people who are driven, but also how to really give everybody a platform and keep the team cohesive is an
Yeah.
important um and I think what you said at the beginning of this is communication is key. I mean, that's honestly like where it all makes a big difference. And I think not only communication, but listening and understanding the words you're using. Like even us, um, we're using the same words, but we were thinking about them differently.
Yes. I I couldn't agree with you more. I think my favorite quote is the challenge to communication is the illusion that ever happened in the first place. So that is the biggest miscommunication is the illusion that communication happened at all. And oftentimes I know that we have a top line leadership that thinks and believes and feels that communication has happened. And so they're good, they're done, right? And they step away from it. And so often we find that when we talk to frontline employees, mid-level management, they are so confused about what is happening next or what their expectations are. And unfortunately, it seems to be just like you called it out. Communication is at the root of so many of these challenges that we find in the workplace, in school, in I mean, I have a class right now where I have no clue what is happening in our class. No clue. Like none whatsoever. I know that the professor is speaking and I know that he's speaking in the same language I know. I still have no clue what's going on, right? Like and I'm certain that he feels that he is being a very clear communicator. And that's the disconnect. And I think that even leaders within a team dynamic feel that I've said my part. You have those people that are like really short and sweet with their words. And then you have people like me who will ramble on forever. So it's just, it's such a huge challenge. And for me,
I agree. And I think part of that is, I mean, we could have a whole episode on communication, which actually I think we should. But
yeah.
as a leader, not only allowing for questions and allowing for real understanding of the people on your team, it's also
Mhm.
understanding each individual's strengths.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's another thing. So I know that about you that you like to ramble, And
Yes.
so and I like it. I appreciate it. I think ramble is not the correct word because when you're rambling, it's actually insightful. There's really good things. When I think of somebody rambling, I think of them not saying anything that is even part of the the topic. But
Well, thank you.
you're intelligent, and so you talk a lot about a subject and you can clearly put it together in like a perfect little package. And that's why your rambling isn't is great because it teaches a lot. You learn a lot from it. But so I know that about you. So I would rather you explain things than me. Like I know that's your strength. And so I know you're gonna like figure out every little detail and be like, oh, don't forget about um all the other people in the world who would care about this topic as well, right? And I think it's important. So um, I think as part leadership within a team, understanding who is great at certain things is amazing. Like I'll come up with agenda, you come up with the all the details around it, right? It's perfect.
I'll find a way to keep talking through it. Yes, I promise.
Exactly. And I'm just like, oh, I'm so concise and focused that I'm just like, I want it just to be like, da, 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 we're done.
Right. No, totally. And I think like even with us, and I know that we've had leadership roles in our work lives, as well as leadership roles that we have being on the board of the student society at Harvard. I mean, I think that we have enough experience to speak into a little bit of like, I know my challenges within a work team dynamic as part of leadership, and it's so much of people wanting their moment in the sun. They want their time to drive that car, thinking, only one person can be a driver. I want to be it. And it's like we're in this for the long haul. Like everybody has their strengths. Do we know what those strengths are so that we can start utilizing those strengths to be the most efficient team and to be that frontline leadership point that is communicating the same thing across the entire line, right? I mean, that has been the biggest challenge. I felt like I had three bosses at one point, and all three of them were telling me to do something different, and my expectations were also different. So imagine how everybody else feels, right? That's got to be such a tough work environment for them to be in. And yeah, I just been there too long. I've been there so many times. So yeah, it's a big question.
It is. And even as a leader, I think it's hard when you have such strong personalities to give clear direction
Hmm.
because you actually want people to shine and to do their thing.
Oh, totally.
And you can trust some people to do that and other people they need a little bit more direction. So it's teams aren't all I think what I find interesting is when you think of teams, you think of one guy at the top and everybody else follows, right? Like
Absolutely.
how they always have that quote of like only one chief and everybody else has to be an Indian, or too many chiefs and not enough Indians.
Too many cooks in a kitchen. Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And it's like having that ability to get all the chiefs to get one goal accomplished can
Right.
sometimes be challenging. And I think that's it's these things that we're talking about, just like communication and utilizing people's strengths and encouraging teamwork and collaboration. Sometimes, as the leader of leaders,
Yeah.
it's a lot of, I'll call it babysitting, it's just like a lot of trying to get people to work cohesively as a team.
Almost
And
like herding kittens. Yeah.
yeah, and it's a little challenging. Have you seen anything successful?
I think I find the most success is found in teams, leadership teams, any type of teams, when empathy is deployed. When people are higher on their emotional intelligence, on their EI, they have IEQ, and they are really actually trying to put themselves into the shoes of the person next to them or the shoes of their leaders, knowing that you may not understand every decision being made, but as long as they're communicating just enough with you about the decisions, some things they can't share. They will share as much as they can sometimes. Some leaders share absolutely nothing and expect their rules to be followed. It just hoping that there's some level of communication actually happening, obviously. But when empathy seems to be at a height, there seems to be a really great um, team dynamic, as far whether it's within leaders or if even it's as a leader with people that report directly into them. I've found really really good success there. Yeah. We've done, I think we just did a workshop on empathy mapping and leadership. It was just, it's one of those really fun things that you get to watch somebody grow, learn their own leadership styles, and then really understand the point of empathy and how different it is from sympathy. We can start bringing up Brene Brown now. She's absolutely brilliant when she explains the difference. So, yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
agree. I couldn't agree more.
How about you though? Like, have you found success in anything specific?
Well, I love sports, so I always like look at
Ooh,
sports.
yes. How
And
did you
you
find it in
definitely,
sports?
well, like, so for example, like, my first love is basketball. I
Excellent.
do love basketball, but you're dealing with a team, especially on the court, right? There's not a
Hmm.
lot of people, and they're all strong leaders, right? And you can see it when a team really does well. It's when they all actually work together. They could be their talent level could be less than the other team, but because they're working as a team, they're more successful. And so, and then you see it when certain players are, it's all about me,
Hmm.
the the team ends up not doing as well. And so, I see it a lot in sports. Why some, even in football, you can see it. Like if the quarterback really brings together the team just does better. They have a better time.
I wonder though, what is it like? Yes, working at a team works great, but what is it that gets them to the point of being able to work as a team? Like what is that key special ingredient that allows teams to see each other as team? Right? Like we've have all these inspiring movies, football movies. We even have Netflix docu series of how like the SEC football teams were able to pull it together and do really well after not doing well for years. I just, everything, there's always a different key ingredient. What do you think
Yeah,
is yours?
I think it's you want the other person to succeed as much as you want yourself to succeed. And like
Mhm.
you see that a lot in marriages when it's
So
very
true.
one-sided, right? When it's so
Yeah.
one-sided and everything you're doing is for your spouse,
Hmm.
the marriage can't survive difficult times because it's inevitable that something's going to happen to the other person, whether it's the husband or the wife, right? And then when something happens and the person who's doing everything can no longer do it for whether it's mental illness or physical illness or just they're trying to get their own goals on track, then it destroys the relationship and the teamwork, right? Because now all of a sudden the other person has to pick up the slack and it tends to not. That's where I see marriages faltering or teams faltering because it's less about um, that one person who's shining and it's more about I want the whole team to do well. I say like it's kind of like a rising tide raises all boats,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
And that's how I see it. It's kind of I know Simon Sinek just wrote a book, Infinite Games, and
Yes.
that's kind of what he's talking about is you see corporations doing really well when they're not playing win lose or everybody
There-
wins. It there are no rules to these games and it's more about looking at it strategically as we want everybody to do better,
Yep.
and kind of like as a leader, I always think of a leader is I'm trying to lead myself out of a job.
Oh, yeah. You brought that up last time. Absolutely.
Exactly. I always think about that because it's that takes away your ego, right? That takes away like I want to look like the star and instead you want everybody with you to like be amazing. And I
Mhm.
think that's where I see the difference on the teams. If it's more about look at all the goals I scored or the baskets I made or this or that, or the shots I blocked, when that's your goal, it's not as effective as if it's did I get, you know, this person to get a basket or whatever it is, shoot a goal.
No, absolutely. I think one of the things that you said that I really can resonate with is Simon Sinek has that infinite games. And he speaks on it at several, like there's a TED talk that was really well done. Um, it's shocking to realize that so many leaders, so many CEOs, so many owners think of their business as there's an end game, like there's a game over point, which you don't want to get to game over. That's not there is no such thing. It is an absolute infinite game that is going to continue, hopefully, if you're doing it well and you're doing it right, continue, right? It's going to absolutely continue, constantly improve and grow into something you never even imagined it hopefully could be, right? And a lot of leaders, like you mentioned, do not have these things in mind. You can have your own personal goals and you can have the goals. I think you can have both where you want everybody to rise up together with that rising tide, but you can also shine in that rising tide too, right? You can show how great you are as a leader, but it doesn't have to outshine other people. And I think we get mixed up in this game of I have to be better than that person, so I'm going to put that person down, or I'm going to shut them down, or I'm going to not answer them, or I'm going to cut them off. Like how many times in meetings do we have nonstop people cutting each other off? I mean, nonstop. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm totally agreeing with you. Like you see it in meetings, in classrooms, in everything, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the way you put that together is exactly what I'm trying to say is that it's not about look at me. It's more about how can we make this team better? Like how can we make the company better? How can we have this company around for the next 100 years? You
Yeah.
know, like I think it is interesting.
It is. And I find so much of it to be if I don't shine brightest, then I'm not shining at all. And I think that is something we have to get past as leaders. And maybe that's what we thought when we were trying to rise up through the ranks. But that is not the case. That is not how we shine through. And we do it by bringing people with us, right? That could be the thing that shines. The people I remember most fondly in my business life had nothing to do with being the shining bright star in the room. They were the ones that were watching and helping each of us shine the brightest that we could shine, having that transformative relationships and leadership within our organizations, within school. I know professors that have been able to really bring out the best in students that never before. I think that sometimes you nailed it. Those are not the things that are going to make success in our world. So, yeah.
Yeah, so having there is a great advantage of having a team full of leaders, but it takes a very strong leader to be
Mhm.
able and a strong leader being okay with not being the star
It's
is
so
what I
true.
mean. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like a very like somebody who understands themselves, knows their strengths and weaknesses, and then can
Mhm.
see people's strengths and weaknesses within the team and play on those. And I think that that is key. And it goes back to the communication aspect of it,
Yeah.
making sure that it's not infinite game. I mean, that it is an infinite game and not a finite game.
Yep. Finite zero sum at that point. It just does not work. Yeah. And I mean, as we wrap it up, I know we got to close up here, but I thank you so much for bringing up that point. I really can appreciate the level of um honesty that is within that. I know that I struggle with it a lot. I have spent a lifetime trying to prove to everybody in the room why I should be in that room. So it's hard not to want to give that like verbal resume. But
It's so true.
but I mean, you're right. So many times, more often than not, it is not about what I can bring to the table, but um how I can have the best come out of my team members and my leadership teams. So, yeah. Any last words?
No, I think you covered it. Nailed it.
All right. Well, thanks again. And we do thank you for, if you're still listening, we appreciate it. If you have any thoughts and anything you want to add, please do reach out to us. You can do that through the app, and let us know what you think. We look forward to any kind of 5 stars that you do want to give us, and tune in next week. We'll see you every week, posting on a Friday. Thanks so much.
Thank you.